Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to INESC Brussels Hub Winter Meeting 2025, held here at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto. This year, as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of INESC TEC, we bring together leading policymakers, research and technology, infrastructure managers and professionals, funding agencies, and other relevant stakeholders to engage in strategic discussions on policy, governance, and funding in research and technology infrastructures. To formally open our meeting, let's welcome to stage the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto, Professor Rui Calçada.
Good morning. Dear Professor João Claro, Chair CEO of INESC TEC, dear Mr. João Aparício, Advisor to the Secretary of State of Science and Innovation, welcome to FEUP, dear Ms. Silvia Garcia, Executive Board Members of Portugal National Agency of Innovation, dear Professor Ricardo Simões, Head of Innovation at the North Regional Coordination and Development Commission, dear Mr. Dominique Sack, Deputy Head of Unit at the European Commission, dear Ms. Helena Hoffert, Vice Chair of the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures, dear Professor Pedro Rodrigues, Vice Rector of the University of Porto, dear Professor Gabriela Fernandes, Pro-Rector of the University of Coimbra, dear Professor Arlindo Oliveira, President of INESC Holding, dear members of the boards of INESC and INESC Institutes, dear invited speakers, distinguished guests and participants. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all at this INESC Brussels Hub Inter Meeting 2025 here at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto. Hosting such a distinguished group of experts, policymakers and research leaders is both an honor and a privilege, particularly as we come together to discuss policy, governance, and funding of research and technology infrastructures. This meeting holds special significance as it not only contributes to shaping the future of European and national research and innovation policy, but it also takes place in a year of celebration, the 40 years of INESC TEC. So congratulations also for this. INESC Brussels Hub plays a fundamental role in representing and coordinating the European engagement of INESC Holding with shareholder of 5 INESC institutes, INESC TEC, INESC ID, INOV, INESC Coimbra, and INESC MEN. Through its strategic actions, the Hub strengthens the position of these institutes in the European research and innovation ecosystem, ensuring their active participation in shaping EU policy and funding priorities. By bringing together experts, institutions, and decision makers, INESC Brussels Hub serves as a crucial bridge between research and policy, fostering collaboration, policy analysis, and capacity building. Its role in supporting multidisciplinary and cross-border cooperation is instrumental in ensuring that research infrastructure remain dynamic, competitive, and aligned with broader EU objectives. The theme of this year's meeting, aligning EU and national strategies for the sustainability, governance, and funding of research and technology infrastructures, is both timely and crucial. These infrastructures are the backbone of modern scientific progress, enabling groundbreaking discoveries and supporting the development of cutting-edge solutions to the world's most pressing challenges. From energy and digital transformation to health, climate change, and manufacturing, these infrastructures provide foundation for scientific advances and industrial competitiveness. Ensuring their long-term sustainability requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders, effective governance structures, strategic investment models, and well-aligned national and European policies are essential to ensuring that these infrastructures are at the forefront of innovation. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all of our distinguished guest speakers for their presence and engagement. A special thank you to all organizing teams from INESC Brussels Hub, from INESC TEC, also from FEUP, whose dedication and hard work have made this event possible. I encourage all the participants to make full advantage of this meeting, engage in discussions, challenge ideas, and explore new collaborations. The insights generated today will not only shape the trajectory of research and technology infrastructures, but I'm sure you also contribute to the broader mission of strengthening Portugal and Europe's position as a global leader in research and innovation. On behalf of FEUP, I extend my warmest welcome to all of you. I wish you a fruitful and inspiring meeting, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes of today's discussions help shape the future of research and innovation. So, welcome to Porto, welcome to FEUP. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor, for hosting us today. The President and CEO of INESC TEC, João Claro, will now address a few words to our audience. Professor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, dear Professor Rui Calçada, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto, our generous host for this event. Dear Ms. Silvia Garcia, Executive Board Member of the National Innovation Agency. Dear Mr. João Aparício, Advisor to the Secretary of State for Science. Dear Professor Ricardo Simões, Head of Innovation of the Commission for Coordination and Regional Development of the North. Dear Mr. Dominik Sobczak, Head of Unit of the Commission, European Commission's Director General for Research and Innovation. Dear Ms. Helena Hoffert, Vice Chair of ESFRI, the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures. Dear Professor Pedro Rodrigues, Vice Rector of the University of Porto. Dear Professor Gabriela Fernandes, Pro-Rector of the University of Coimbra. Dear Professor Lindo Oliveira, President of INESC Holding. Dear members of the boards of INESC and the INESC Institutes. Dear speakers, guests, and members of the INESC community. Thank you for your presence here today. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 edition of the INESC Brussels Hub Winter Meeting. Before we begin, I want to inform you that, unfortunately, the Secretary of State for Science, Professor Ana Paiva, and the President of the Foundation for Science and Technology, Professor Madalena Alves, will not be able to join us today. They reached out to us yesterday afternoon, explaining that due to unforeseen scheduling changes, they would not be able to be here today. So both have expressed sincere regrets for not being able to join us and send their best wishes for the meeting, recognize the importance of the discussions that we will hold here today. This is the first of the two major annual events to be organized this year by INESC Brussels Hub, our joint representation of the 5 INESC institutes in Brussels. And we are dedicating the event to discussing the future of research and technology infrastructures in Europe. A distinctive characteristic of what we aim to do today is to bring together and link institutional, regional, national, and European perspectives on this important topic. And this distinctive feature, this bridging role, is at the core of the work that we do in Brussels, connecting the INESC institutes with Europe and engaging us as institutions with other European stakeholders. Our aim is to contribute our best to both the shaping and the implementation of European policies, always ensuring their effective articulation with regional and national strategies. The meeting is part of that effort, focusing at a crucial moment on the policy framework that will define the next era of RTI governance in Europe. Throughout the day, we will work to bring together perspectives from different levels in a structured discussion on governance, funding, and the integration of RTIs into Europe's broader scientific innovation and industrial strategies. This is an opportunity for all of us to gain a deeper understanding of the current RTI landscape, intensify our engagement with the ongoing policy processes that are shaping their long-term sustainability, accessibility, and impact, and better prepare ourselves to play a more active and more impactful role in this evolving landscape. This year marks an important milestone for our representation in Brussels. 5 years ago, we opened our office in Rue du Luxembourg, just days before the COVID-19 pandemic forced us all to transition to remote collaboration. In multiple ways, the pandemic highlighted the importance of strong, resilient networks and deep European connections, which brought a heightened intensity of purpose to the launch of our representation. Since then, INESC Brussels Hub has been growing as a point of connection between our institutes and the broader European research and innovation ecosystem. For us at INESC TEC, this milestone is part of a broader and deeply significant institutional moment that marks 2025, the celebration of our 40th anniversary. Our 4-decade journey runs in parallel with another historic milestone, Portugal's signing of the Treaty of Accession to European Communities in 1985. Since then, INESC TEC has grown alongside Portugal's integration into the European research and innovation system, driven by a shared ambition to leverage science, technology, and innovation as key drivers of development. We have envisioned this anniversary as more than a reflection on the past. We want it to be also an opportunity to affirm directions for the future. To that end, we will be holding a series of events throughout the year, engaging national and international partners to address key challenges and opportunities in science, technology, and innovation. This meeting is among the first of these moments, and it could not be more fitting. It is a reaffirmation of our deeply rooted commitment to research, innovation, and European collaboration, and it places at the center of the discussion one of the most critical enablers of European scientific, technology, and innovation advancement, research and technology infrastructures. Along our 40-year trajectory, we have progressively deepened our integration into European R&I networks, expanded our participation in EU-funded collaborations, and reinforced our commitment to the European R&I agenda. The establishment of the INESC Brussels Hub 5 years ago, jointly with the other 4 INESC institutes, was a natural step in this evolution, enhancing our ability to engage actively in both the shaping and implementation of Europe's research and innovation strategies. Today's meeting is a direct contribution to this path, bridging institutional, regional, national, and European perspectives to strengthen European dynamics and further embed ourselves in them. Research and technology infrastructures are essential to the European research and innovation ecosystem. They provide advanced capabilities that are necessary to conduct frontier scientific research, support technology development, and facilitate the translation of knowledge into industrial and societal applications. They are fundamental for Europe's ambitions for scientific excellence, technological sovereignty, and industrial competitiveness. While their strategic importance is widely recognized, ensuring their long-term impact and sustainability requires addressing several persistent challenges. First, sustainable funding models. RTIs require long-term stable funding to operate efficiently and plan for future investments. This includes ensuring a balanced mix of European, national, and private funding sources to avoid reliance on short-term or project-based support. Second, coordination between national and European strategies. RTIs operate within a multi-level governance framework, requiring alignment between EU and national policies to minimize fragmentation, maximize synergies, and optimize resource allocation. Third, industry access and technological development. RTIs must be open and accessible not only to the academic community, but also to industry and the broader society. Given Europe's strategic priorities, RTIs must be fully embedded in its broader economic and societal objectives. Addressing these challenges requires a coherent, structured, and forward-looking approach to governance and funding. Today's discussions take place at a critical moment in European policymaking, with several key initiatives shaping the future of RTIs. The findings of the Commission Expert Group on Technology Infrastructures have just been published, and this recent report has stressed the need to distinguish between research infrastructures and technology infrastructures, and to establish tailored governance and funding mechanisms for each, recognizing their complementary but distinct roles in the European R&I ecosystem. The European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures, in its 2024 landscape analysis, has highlighted the evolving role of RTIs in addressing scientific and societal challenges and the need for stronger integration across European and national strategies. It has also launched a process leading to the next S3 roadmap, which will define strategic priorities for research infrastructures in the coming years. The European Research and Innovation Area Committee, ERAC, has recently launched an opinion questionnaire seeking input from member states on how to improve coordination, funding, and accessibility of RTIs. Key areas of focus include addressing regional imbalances, fostering transnational collaboration, and strengthening RTI's role in the broader European research landscape. And finally, the Competitiveness Compass, a key European Commission initiative, has highlighted the need to align RTIs with Europe's industrial and innovation priorities, while discussions on the next multi-annual financial framework will be central to defining how Europe will structure its financial and strategic support for RTIs in the coming decade, ensuring that they effectively contribute to economic growth, technological leadership, and industrial competitiveness. These policy developments will play a key role in determining how RTIs are funded, governed, and positioned within Europe's research and innovation agenda. Today's meeting provides a timely opportunity to exchange insights and engage with these discussions, addressing several critical questions. How should governance and funding models for RTIs evolve to ensure long-term sustainability? How can national, regional, and European strategies be better aligned to maximize impact? What role should RTIs play in supporting European industrial policy and technological advancement? Our morning sessions will focus on the policy and funding landscape for RTIs, examining how they fit within broader EU strategies. The afternoon session, organized in collaboration with the RTIs project, will take a practical, needs-driven approach to identify key gaps, challenges, and opportunities for RTIs, with a particular focus on governance, funding models, and accessibility for industry. The conclusions from this session will contribute directly to ongoing European-level discussions on how to enhance the effectiveness and sustainability of RTIs. Today's discussions will be an opportunity for all of us to gain a deeper understanding of the current RTI landscape, engage more actively with the policy processes shaping their future, and better equip ourselves to contribute to it in meaningful ways. They also offer a chance to strengthen the alignment between national and European strategies and ensure that RTIs are better positioned to serve researchers, industry, policymakers, and society as a whole. The more effectively we integrate these perspectives, the better we can enhance the accessibility, sustainability, and impact of RTIs across Europe. So let's make the most of this day, sharing insights, deepening perspectives, and carrying these exchanges forward into the policy and strategic decisions that will shape the future of RTIs in Europe. Before closing, I wanted to acknowledge the outstanding work of our organizing team. First of all, Ricardo Miguel, the head of our representation in Brussels, INESC Brussels Hub, whose leadership and dedication have been absolutely instrumental in shaping this event. The teams from INESC TEC's International Relations Service, our Executive Assistants, Communication Service, and the Technical Support Services, and also FEUP's Event Support Team, whose invaluable efforts have made this meeting possible. Thank you. Thank you all for your presence, and I look forward to our full day of engaging and productive discussions.
Thank you very much, Professor, for this moment. Our first roundtable sets the stage for policy alignment, national and regional strategies concerning research and technology infrastructures. RIs and TIs' fundamental role driving innovation and fostering their collaboration. Distinguished speakers will share their perspectives, policy developments, strategic investments, and future frameworks for these infrastructures. Moderating this Arlindo Oliveira, President of INESC Holding. Our experts panelists includes Dominique Sobjak, Deputy Head of Units RTD-E1 European Commission, Helena Offerts, Vice Chair of ESFRI, Ricardo Simões, Head of Innovation at CCDR Norte, Silvia Garcia, Executive Board Member at ANI. I will now give the floor to our moderator.
So I think we start with short presentations to set up the setting, right? And the first one, Dominique. Okay, please.
She's got to go over there. Okay, great. That should work. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Many thanks for the invitation to this important event, and congratulations on the great anniversary to INESC TEC. My job is relatively easy because we had really great scene-setting speeches to start the event by Professor Claro and Professor Calzada, so I can be a little bit shorter. What I would like to share with you today is the context for our work at the European Commission on technology infrastructures themselves. Elena will then speak about research infrastructures. The context, state of play, key recommendations from the expert group that was already mentioned this morning, and a little bit of the preview for the next steps that we see at the level of the Commission on how this discussion on infrastructures will continue in the coming months. In terms of the starting point and state of play, I will spend a minute on that slide, which gives you a bit of an overview of how we see the role of infrastructures and how and why are we actually working on technology infrastructures themselves. So we have the big goals at the level of the EU that are being more and more actual as the days pass, which are the goals of strategic autonomy, technology sovereignty, climate neutrality, and we can name a few others. Now, what is important is that in order to achieve those goals, we need to accelerate industrial transformation and we need to improve our competitiveness. I'm, of course, speaking in many shortcuts, but one of the ways in which, one of the preconditions that are necessary in order to achieve those is boosting the R&I investments or R&D investments of the private sector. We have the goal of reaching the 3% of GDP investment in research and development and innovation. We are quite far from that. We have not achieved much progress over the last 20 years. And the biggest gap that we have is actually the level of the investments in the private sector. So we need to strive in order to mobilize these investments better. This is the area where we are really lagging behind our main competitors, being that US, Japan, Korea, or also increasingly China. And in order actually to achieve industrial transformation, we also need to scale up and deploy the technological solutions that are being developed. A big an important role in that can be played and should be played by research and technology infrastructures. The capacities and the services that they provide, both to the scientific community and to the industry, including large industry, but also smaller scale companies, startups, scale-ups, and SMEs. Over the last 20 years, we have had a rich and a very successful policy for research infrastructures, but we haven't really had that for technology infrastructure. And we see that there is an important gap in this particular area where we need to really step up our efforts. So this is why some years ago at the level of the Commission, we have started working on looking into how we can set up actually a policy for technology infrastructures at the EU level. We started back in 2019 with the staff working document of the Commission on technology infrastructures themselves. It was the first document that actually characterized the TI concept in general, and also identified 4 key challenges that are still actually relevant today, which were the visibility of those infrastructures to the users, prioritization at the EU level, but not only at the EU level of investments, accessibility of these infrastructures, and also supporting their collaboration across regions and across countries. Later on, this was recognized also in the Commission communication on the new European research area, where one of the actions, Action 12, you have here the third line, the second line of the activities, which is the creation of the coordination mechanism to provide industry with the technology infrastructures needed to test, validate, and upscale innovations. So this is the framework with which we work. This is the mandate which we got to work at the level of the Commission, but also with member states and stakeholders to develop a European approach to technology infrastructures. And so since basically 2 years when the first ERA policy agenda started in 2022, we have worked in that framework to develop our ideas for what we could do at the European level for technology infrastructure. In the meantime, there were a number of important interventions also from member states through the Council. First of all, the whole approach to the new European research area was validated by the Council in the Council conclusions on the new era, where technology infrastructures were also mentioned. We had Council conclusions on research infrastructures that stressed a holistic approach to the ecosystem of infrastructures, taking into account both research and technology infrastructures in their own right. And then last year we had a set of 2 Council conclusions on knowledge valorization and on European industrial policy that also called for developing a European approach to technology infrastructures, defining them, analyzing the needs of users, etc. Last year we also had 3 important reports that all of us know by now very well. On the single market by Mr. Letta, on competitiveness by Mr. Draghi, and on the recommendations for the future framework program under the interim evaluation of Horizon Europe by the group led by Mr. Hayter. All of these reports actually stress the importance of both research and technology infrastructures, and all of these reports also identified technology infrastructures themselves as an important area of focus where investments need to be strengthened. So what have we done in the last 2 years? We have actually focused on gathering evidence first to understand the field, understand the challenges of the field, understand in which directions we should go. We had a study done that mapped national, regional, and EU policies and support programs dedicated to technology infrastructures, and the main author of that and coordinator of that study is actually in the room. So thanks, Sophie, for that report. It provided an overview of the situation at the EU level, but also it provided 32 country reports, so every EU member state can actually have a look at how their policies, R&I policies, more broadly support technology infrastructures. In addition to that, we had also 5 country reports from outside of the EU for UK, Switzerland, US, Canada, and Japan to learn about the approaches that are outside of the EU. We also examined the state of play in selected areas in technology infrastructures, in clean and renewable energy technologies, in advanced materials and hydrogen through the initiative of Open Innovation Testbeds at the EU level, the pilot initiative that we have on European aviation, research and technology infrastructures, and also the ongoing RTIs project, of which also representatives are here in the room, that looks into some specific areas. We analyzed with the expert group of the Commission that we set up. It was the group that was mentioned earlier, where INESC was a member. We're very grateful for that. Analyzed user needs for technology infrastructures, and the group published a separate report on that, and also identifying obstacles for investments. Now, let's focus a little bit on the recommendations. As was mentioned earlier by Professor Claro, the expert group report was actually published, I think, 3 weeks ago, on the 14th of February. And it has 5 kind of key recommendations, higher level recommendations, on which I would like to spend a little bit more time. First of all, as we were asked by the member states, the expert group proposes a definition for technology infrastructures. This is important because as long as the staff working document from 2019 actually defined technology infrastructures, this definition served the purpose of developing activities in the meantime, but it has not been really picked up. There were a number of deficiencies of that definition that were also recognized by the expert group, and that definition was not really picked up in national policies. And in order to have, obviously, a European approach to technology infrastructures, we need to first have a common understanding of what they are and what functions they play. So the expert group provides a proposal for such an updated definition, and also considers it important that such a definition is included in major strategic and policy documents at the EU level. I will not read out the definition here, but decomposing it a little bit, it deals with substance. So these are facilities, equipment, and capabilities and resources required to develop, test, upscale, and validate technology. The purpose of these infrastructures: to enable and accelerate technological innovations towards societal market adoption and fostering industrial competitiveness. The scope of services that they provide: a wide range of capacities and services from pre-competitive applied research through demonstration, validation of technology, up to small-scale production. Identify some specific types of TIs as examples: test beds, demonstration and testing facilities, pilot lines, living labs, or clean rooms. It speaks about the hosts and owners. They are usually embedded in non-profit research and technology organizations, technical universities, or technology centers. Can be public, semi-public, and also they can be place-based or digital. In terms of, so the first recommendation is basically to take a definition, agree on a definition with the member states, as it was also the request of the member states to propose such a definition by the European Commission, and then use it consistently both in European and in national policies. Second recommendation is linked to access. The group identified a number of important challenges with accessibility to these infrastructures. These challenges largely confirm also the challenges that we've seen from the staff working document of 2019, but we went much more into the details and much more in depth in the analysis of specific challenges. So first of all, what we see is that there are limited financial and human resources in companies themselves to engage with technology infrastructures. We see that there is a lack of visibility and information about available infrastructures, that access conditions can be quite discouraging, quite complex. There are certain legal, financial, and administrative frameworks that make accessing infrastructures problematic and challenging. And especially these barriers are much stronger when we speak about accessing infrastructures across regions or across countries. And that actually there is a certain reluctance in the beginning to engage with infrastructures to dedicate resources, which is often broken down when the first experience is positive, which is often the case. So the expert group recommends to develop a charter for access to technology infrastructures at European level, to develop support measures to improve visibility of these infrastructures and their services across the EU, and also to increase the opportunities and support for companies to access these infrastructures, and especially those located in other regions or countries. And the report, I'm not going to go to the details here, but the report includes several very specific ideas for measures and actions both at EU, national, and also the level of infrastructures. The third recommendation is about developing an effective investment prioritization mechanism for European technology infrastructures. As mentioned earlier, such a mechanism doesn't actually exist. We have some individual initiatives driven by specific policy needs. We have the open innovation test beds that we set up through Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. We have the CHIPS pilot lines that were established through the CHIPS Act and the joint undertaking. We have some other investments in high-performance computers, for example. We have testing and experimentation facilities for AI, and now the AI factories and gigafactories initiatives. But these are fragmented, and we have no space in the EU to actually look bottom-up and more comprehensively at the landscape to identify that kind of needs for investments. So the expert group recommends to actually establish such a mechanism to be able to identify those investments together with the different communities, together with the research infrastructure operator, to the technology infrastructures operators, including also research infrastructure capacities and the users, to be guided by a robust set of criteria, including also strategic relevance, feasibility, and impact, and the real needs of the industrial ecosystems, to build interconnected networks of RIs and TIs to strengthen their collaboration and the way in which they can actually address the needs of industrial users, and also to test the approach and implement a limited set of pilot actions. In terms of mobilizing funding for investments, this is also a very important component. Now, of course, when we develop priorities, when we identify priorities, it is important to actually be able to then fund the investments that would be needed. This is something that is quite challenging. We have seen that, for example, with the aviation research and technology infrastructures, a roadmap was established, and then actually the gap is then how to make the investments and how to provide the funding for those investments. Technology development is progressing rapidly. Our competitors do not sleep. If we don't increase the efficiency in the way that we actually fund investments that we identify as priorities, will not be able to go far. So the expert group looked also into that, looked into possible sources of funding that should be considered in that kind of a framework, and looked at how this could be supported at the EU level with proposed top-up or co-funding investment components in specific infrastructures, and also to fund a so-called European dimension where more horizontal activities would be supported at EU level. The fourth recommendation is about establishing an EU level a robust governance framework for TIs. It is considered that if we aim to have an ambitious policy for technology infrastructures, we need a dedicated and robust governance mechanism to manage the policy and to manage the priorities. As I mentioned, that kind of governance framework does not exist at the EU level. At national levels, also many countries lack dedicated policies and strategies and funding from programs for technology infrastructures, and there is not really a dedicated discussion space at the EU level to share experiences, discuss priorities, discuss challenges, etc. So, as you can imagine, the expert group would recommend that such a multi-actor governance framework is established, including a horizontal coordination component that would deal with strategic issues, investment prioritization, mutual learning, and other horizontal topics, and also thematic coordination, so that when we go into specific technologies, when we address specific needs of industrial, on different industrial ecosystems, there should be also the dedicated governance mechanism that would address that and that would manage it, building a lot on what already exists in different sectors and in different technologies at EU level, because there are, of course, many initiatives like European partnerships and others. And it is recommended that this is first implemented, not to lose momentum as a light advisory structure, and then to see in the longer run what would be needed. There are some details, of course, for the horizontal coordination and the thematic coordination with functions, the proposed structure and responsibilities, as well as tools. I'm not going to go into the details of that for the sake of time. We can engage further in the discussion how this could be set up. The fifth recommendation is about funding programs, where funding opportunities at EU level for technology infrastructures are currently fragmented and uncoordinated. And that means that it is difficult to actually agree on common priorities and then to follow up with the investment, especially going beyond individual countries. And the expert group considers that such a dedicated funding for TIs is necessary at the EU level through different programs supporting research and innovation and competitiveness, with a pooling of public and private funding sources that may be available to facilitate access to TIs for users, where funding of access is actually an important barrier, to develop technology infrastructure services, support upskilling of staff, strengthen delivery and uptake of these infrastructure services, and also to foster collaboration and networking among technology infrastructures, but also between technology infrastructures and research infrastructure. The group looked also into the state aid rules, which are found as a challenge to manage. So there are a number of recommendations how to improve the clarity and legal certainty around the state aid rules to make the investments in technology infrastructures more reliable and easier to implement. In terms of the next steps, for technology infrastructures, we are looking at specific activities in the short term. Right now, we are, first of all, the objective is, and the contribution of the expert group is aimed to bring us to a European strategy for research and technology infrastructures. We plan for July this year. That would include, first of all, a holistic approach to the ecosystems, or to the ecosystem of research and infrastructures and technology infrastructures, but also really develop a concept for an EU-level policy dedicated to technology infrastructures. In the meantime, we will have, and we are having, different stakeholder consultations through events, but we'll also have a formal call for evidence that would be published openly to gather insights from the broader community. There are also discussions on other and building links with other EU policy initiatives that are relevant for infrastructure, such as startups and scale-up strategy, which is aimed for June this year. Life sciences strategy, which is also planned for the first half of this year. There will also be a bioeconomy strategy, the ERA Act, which is planned for next year, Innovation Act, which is planned for the end of this year, beginning of next year, and also Biotechnology Act. So there's actually a package of quite a comprehensive and big package of activities and of initiatives at EU level, including both strategies and legislative acts. There is also an Advanced Materials Act, which is in the making, that are of relevance to research and technology infrastructure. And we'll have, of course, the proposal for the next MFF and the proposals for the next funding program for research and innovation. More in the short term, through the work program for 2025, we also plan to have, as recommended by the expert group, to have some pilot actions that would immediately test the European approach. So the expert group developed a number of ideas of what could be the components of that kind of pilots, and we do envisage some budget still subject to be for formal adoption of the work program 2025, through which we would be able to fund 5 or 6 of such pilots to test the European approach and to move ahead in certain specific areas that are of particular priority and also that are ready to move ahead. Many thanks, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Dominic. I now invite Elena Hoffert to share your views on RTIs.
Yes, thank you very much for this invitation. And good morning, everybody. I will present some ideas from European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures. We don't use yet the notion of RTIs. We just use the term of research infrastructures, and we speak about the complementarities with technology infrastructures. But first, I would like to start with the definition, what we are speaking about in the S3. So research infrastructures, you see it here. It's a definition which is approved by Horizon Europe. It's used at the European level. We also use it in France, for example. So these are facilities that provide resources and services for research communities to construct research and foster innovation in their fields, including the human resources, equipment, or sets of instruments. And these facilities can be found in all research fields, also in human sciences, in sciences and humanities, and they are essential to achieve excellence in research and innovation. The main users are mainly researchers for fundamental research, but they also provide access to industrial users, and they can be used for education, for public services. So the main idea of research infrastructures, and actually their objective, is to be open to the users from all horizons in order to upscale the fundamental research and to go to the limits of fundamental research. The European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures was established in 2002 because actually at that moment already more than 20 years ago we understood that we need the common European effort in order to achieve the necessary level of excellence for research infrastructures, because no single state can afford such kind of unique research facilities. So the forum, or Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures, was founded in 2002 with ideas, with the main mandate to support coherent and strategy-led approach to policymaking on research infrastructures in Europe, to facilitate multilateral initiatives leading to a better use and development of research infrastructures. This forum is also acting like an incubator for research infrastructures in Europe, because we have a mandate to establish a European strategy forum roadmap. And when we accept research infrastructures on this roadmap, from the very beginning we follow up this research infrastructure up to the establishment. So we detect at each stage where are the weaknesses and how we can help, and also with the European Commission, with the European money, we try to reinforce the capabilities of research infrastructures in order to make them efficient and operational after their presence as project on a research on S3 roadmap. So S3 roadmap indicates new and major upgrades of pan-European research infrastructures, which will be essential for European research for the coming decades, 10, 20, and maybe 30 years. Thanks to this roadmap, we stimulate the implementation of these facilities, and we also update the roadmap regularly. I will show it later in my slides. What also happens is that we also have permanent active communication with the different bodies of research, European research area, and thanks to this communication, we also show the importance of research infrastructures at the European level, and we help to join our actions in the European Union in order to strengthen research infrastructures. This slide is just to show you one of the research infrastructures, which is ESS in Lund, which is being constructed in Lund now. On this slide, we speak about the vision of S3, which is actually, as I mentioned, to equip Europe with the best research infrastructures of state-of-the-art level in order to equip Europe with the facilities for groundbreaking research. And we can also see in the recent reports, for example, in Draghi report, it was said that we need this kind of research infrastructures. We need them also in complementarity with technology research infrastructures in order to upscale our capacities in Europe and in order to move forward the world-leading research in Europe. So S3, since 2002, started to establish a European roadmap on research infrastructures, and the first roadmap was published in 2006. There was a restricted number of research infrastructures in this roadmap, mainly from physical sciences. It was like a traditional approach. We then decided to update this roadmap in 2008 and then in 2010 in order to enlarge the spectrum of research infrastructures and to include different other research fields. And actually, it was the first period of S3 roadmap in which we can say, well, the first S3 roadmap cycle. We arrived at the total number of financial investment of something like 20 billion euros and a long-term commitment to these research infrastructures for operation at about 2 billion euros per year. And at that moment, it was in 2016, S3 decided to open a next roadmap cycle in its approach towards research infrastructures in Europe, because we decided that it was not possible to add any new update, some new research infrastructures, and we need to follow them up. So starting with 2016, S3 invented a concept of life cycle, which is actually a very interesting concept where you think about from the whole life cycle of research infrastructure from design up to the end. And we said that at a certain moment we have to make some checks and to see where the infrastructure finds itself on this life cycle curve. So we decided to speak about the 10 years term for S3 projects. So as soon as a project is accepted to European strategy roadmap. It has 10 years in order to become mature and to become operational. And after 10 years, we make an evaluation and we see if this project becomes a landmark. It means it becomes one of the essential research infrastructures in Europe, or it cannot become a landmark because it hasn't fulfilled all the necessary criteria, and then this project has to go out from the roadmap. That was invented 10 years ago, and actually what is happening now, we are planning to establish a new roadmap in 2026, and we will see how our projects develop since 2016. It will be a very interesting, actually, experience. So, as I said, this next cycle of S3 roadmap started in 2016. We updated the roadmap in 2018 and 2021, and now we are in 2025, and we are approaching we are actually already in the new third S3 roadmap cycle, where we decided to decouple landscape analysis, which we always publish together with the S3 roadmap, and the roadmap itself. It means that landscape analysis of research infrastructures in Europe shows the general situation, what is happening in Europe, where we need new research infrastructures, and where we have some gaps. And then, based on this analysis, we will start updating the S3 roadmap. The S3 landscape analysis was published in 2024 in summer. You can find actually this analysis on the website, which is indicated here. In order to publish this landscape analysis, we contacted many stakeholders. It was for the first time when we had really direct inputs from all key stakeholders, users of research infrastructures, also governments, also funders, and all the actors which are actually concerned by this topic. And we are very happy about this book. It contains two sections. First one is the analysis of each domain of research infrastructures, and the second section is like intersectorial analysis. It shows the interconnections between different research fields. It shows the missions and the key role of research infrastructure in all these different intersections. What is happening now is that we are planning to update this S3 roadmap, which we published in 2021. The idea is to publish the next roadmap in 2026. What is new is our approach is that, first of all, the landscape analysis, which was published in 2024, should be taken into account. It is very important. It is our strategic document, and all the new proposals which are submitted to S3 in the next months, actually, should be coherent with this landscape analysis and should correspond to the needs of the European communities in research infrastructure. We also make a particular focus on funding for research infrastructures, because funding is, as it was already mentioned several times today, is a critical point. Sustainability of research infrastructures is something which is very important for us all, and that's why this will be a critical also point in the submission of the projects. The projects should be also relatively mature, because otherwise they will not have time to come to the implementation in 10 years of staying on S3 roadmap. And yes, the new suggestions should also certainly take take into account environmental considerations, which are becoming also very important to us today. What is important to say is that S3 roadmap is something which is actually, well, I would say, which is piloted at the higher level of member states. It means that an individual researcher cannot submit a project to S3 roadmap. Individual researchers, they can have good ideas, but they should be really supported by their governments, because in the end, the eligibility criteria of S3 roadmap is to have a statement of support from the ministries which are responsible for research, but also statement of financial engagement, which also should be signed by the ministries. So this is already one of the points which show to which extent the projects should be mature, because as you understand, research ministries will never sign letters of support if the projects are not yet mature, if the projects haven't proved their importance for research communities, and if the ministry, for example, doesn't understand how it will be financed in future. So all these things should be carefully thought about, and they are taken into consideration when we look at the research infrastructure projects which arrive as candidates for S3 roadmap. And then as soon as it arrives as candidate, then we have a particular procedure which you can find in public guide on S3 roadmap, because the projects are evaluated by two different groups, or sometimes 3 groups. They are evaluated from the scientific point of view, and they are also evaluated from the implementation point of view. And in the end, both evaluations should be high or very high, otherwise the project will not be accepted, the S3 roadmap. So that's all, just to explain to you to which extent it's a big effort for us all, the construction of this S3 roadmap. But it's very important to take into consideration all these points, because we are constructing together the European research infrastructures, which will be very important for us all for the next 20, 30 years. So we need to be engaged from the very beginning till the end, because the life doesn't end with the S3 roadmap. It starts only. Afterwards, we have to construct it. We have to think about the operational costs. We have to think about the investments. All these things should be taken into account actually from the very beginning. This is the signal from S3. I can also say a couple of words about some other activities which are also doing at S3, like S3 IOSC task force. We also published S3 position paper on the next framework program. We published recently also S3 report on funding of research infrastructures, and two events are upcoming, the next stakeholder forum and internal workshop on S3 future. Concerning S3 IOSC task force, what it is, it's like a consultative place where we speak with S3 association representatives, and we discuss together our common needs and ideas, so that all the needs of research infrastructures are taken account properly in the development of IOSC. Actually, it works quite well. Many documents were published already, common documents. You can find them all on S3 web page and also on IOSC web page, so I will not go into details here. Just to say that we are communicating with each other, and we are trying to support the development and the needs of research infrastructures. Yes. What was also done, we published a S3 position paper on next framework program. We published it in the end of 2028. So the key messages you can also see here on the screen is that we have to think about research infrastructures as capacity building layers. In the next framework program, we need a holistic view on research infrastructures, which can also integrate technology infrastructures, but it was not really developed in detail in this paper because we are still in the reflection, as Dominic showed. Even member states are still in this process of reflection now with this ERAC opinion. Yes, we also have to think about the sustainability of research infrastructures in Europe. Again, details you can find in the document on ESFRI website. An interesting document was also published in January, is the ESFRI report on funding. The objective of this report was to find, identify funding practices of member states and to see how the research infrastructures are funded, different cases, different approaches, and maybe based on these inputs to produce some recommendations and to give some ideas about the best practices. We analyzed the inputs and we saw that the ways of funding research infrastructures are so diverse that it's difficult even at the moment to try to converge into some more or less, I wouldn't even say common approaches, but to converge somewhere. And sometimes it's even difficult to member states themselves to understand all the financial channels. So the recommendations which were published in the report are quite general, but I think it's already a good step for future because we are speaking about the transparency of funding sources for research infrastructures. We are speaking about the transparency of funding sources, in particular for distributed research infrastructures. This is very important because we need to know how different national nodes are also financed in respect to big single-site research infrastructures, for example. For the moment, this is something which is quite complex and not so straightforward, and the recommendation was to continue to work on this and to make these procedures more transparent, maybe. And we also identified some fields which can be better supported at national but also at European levels. And in particular, we spoke about the access to research infrastructures, which is the main mission actually of research infrastructures. So this access should continue to be supported at the European level. Also, public missions of research infrastructures, which go beyond services to researchers, can be also taken over by European funds. We also think about synergies of different funds, of combinations of different funds from European levels. This is a complex question. We suggest some ideas, but then we will see how it will work. And we also recommend strongly to all the member states to have some strategic documents. If it's not a national roadmap, then maybe it can be something else, which can be like an orientation paper for the governments in order to see where are the priorities and how these priorities can be funded then at national levels. And it would be very, very good when these priorities are also articulated with the European priorities so that we can combine our efforts and we can make kind of synergies of efforts and commit together to these wonderful European endeavors. I don't know if it doesn't, yes. Among some other activities of ESFRI, we also have stakeholder forum discussions regularly, once per year, more or less, and the next stakeholder forum will be organized in June. The topic of this stakeholder forum will be the sustainability of research infrastructures, and as we say, funding is not the only point of sustainability. We have also other questions like access to research infrastructures, contribution to innovation, international cooperation. All these points can contribute to sustainability, so all these points will be discussed in stakeholder forum in June. And we are also thinking about the changes inside of ESFRI itself. So with the approaching end of this framework program and the next framework program, we started thinking also about ESFRI procedures, ESFRI role, ESFRI approaches. And that's why we are organizing an internal workshop in the end of March, actually. It will be like an internal discussion about how we should continue to support research infrastructures at the European level, how we should maybe reorganize our missions, maybe not, maybe everything is fine and we should go on like we are, or maybe we need something else, maybe we need to make our role stronger also at the European level. So all these points will be discussed in this internal workshop. Well, and just a couple of words to show how we in France are organizing also our research infrastructures communities in order to show that we are trying actually to articulate our national strategy with the European orientations. As you know, France is actually supporting research infrastructures since more than 20 years already. We are a funder state of different research, international scientific research organizations like CERN, EMBL, or ESO, and we are actually also very active supporters of ESFRI developments. Today in the ESFRI roadmap, we have 63 research infrastructures, 41 landmarks, and 22 projects, and France is member of 46 research infrastructures out of 63 on ESFRI roadmap. All these research infrastructures are identified on our national roadmap for research infrastructures. And this is actually one of the links between these two strategic documents. And France is member of 37 landmarks out of 41 on ESFRI roadmap. And we also host 10 headquarters of these landmarks. So this is to say that for us, the European roadmap for research infrastructures is a very important strategic document. We are articulating the update of national roadmap calendar with the calendar of European roadmap on research infrastructures on purpose, because we want to create this pavement of research infrastructures of the highest international level standards, which can meet the needs of scientific communities, our also national scientific communities, and we also want to think our national research infrastructures in the context of the European research infrastructures and in the context of this international landscape in order to better position our scientific communities. So we have the national roadmap, which is published in 2021, and we're starting now to think about the next roadmap in 2026. We have 108 research infrastructures on this roadmap, and actually it is broader than the European roadmap, but as I said, all the infrastructures which are on the European roadmap are in our national roadmap as well. Well, here are just a couple of slides to show how important for us are all these European trends, because in 2022 we were at the presidency of the European Council, and we organized several events dedicated to research infrastructures. One of them was the launch of the stakeholder forum, which will continue actually since that time at Paris-Saclay University, and the other one was a wonderful conference which celebrated 20 years of ESFRI, and it was called Research Infrastructures at the Heart of Scientific Discoveries. We invited Nobel Prize winner, and we invited a lot of researchers, senior researchers, but also young researchers who showed how they made their scientific discoveries thanks to European research infrastructures. And I finish here. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. And I invite Silvia Garcia for a short note on the national take on this.
It's working? Okay. So I bring you the landscape of technology infrastructures, because research infrastructures, I hope that Madalena, because it's leading by FCT, and Madalena could bring the landscape. But regarding the technology infrastructures, within Portugal is not different from Europe. We have several, and this fragmental is very fragmented sector. We have concerning infrastructure in technology infrastructures, we have collabs, laboratory collaboratives, laboratories collaboratives, and also innovation technology innovation centers. All these is around 60 infrastructures, and they have different maturities. If you are talking about collabs, they are much younger than CTIs, and they work on, they have all the same purpose, which is transfer technology, but they work, one of them, they work for using an agenda, innovation agenda, which is collabs, and the other is among more related to industrial sectors. These infrastructures, they are related together, and they put in place, arrange together and put in place some nets, which are text beds and digital innovation hubs. These nets is national, they work together, they are consortiums, they work together in Portugal, in national nets, but some of them are working together with European nets. Digital Innovation One, hubs, 3 of them work together with European. And these nets, these digital innovation hubs, and also one of the test beds, they are funding both by national and European funds. Other important thing to the future that we need to think is how can we, is also one of the points that was pointing out, how are we going to manage and organize all these infrastructures that exist in Portugal and also in Europe. And this is a very important issue because we need to define which is the aim of technology infrastructures, but it's a large aim, or is a large scope, I would say. Some of them are more related with research into infrastructures, some of them are more close to the market, but is a possible rule for both. But we also need that the whole of them need to be higher in RTOs, which means to knowledge transfer. And for that, within Portugal, most of them need to be more enforced to get to be more close to the scale-up, and also to improve deployment, to help deployment. Otherwise, this is also I understand that in Europe is some of them is also the bottleneck, because otherwise we can't close the gap of innovation cycle in Portugal. And I do believe that some of the CTIs and some of the collabs are on that place, but most of them are not. Most of them are more related with research infrastructure, more close to the scientific. And the other ones are more close to the industrial testing. So this is one of the for the future, one of the aims that we want to forward and to continue in our policy.
Thank you, Silvia. And now for final initial intervention, Ricardo Simões with the more local view and how you coordinate with the national and the European dimension.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be discussing these very interesting and important topics. Let me just greet my colleagues and thank INESC for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be here in one of our infrastructure, one of our centers that is of worldwide recognition, and so always a pleasure to come to INESC. On a regional scale, let me mention that, first of all, we are just going through currently a process of what we call entrepreneurial discovery process for financing research infrastructures and technology infrastructures. So we started with the technology infrastructures process first. This has been going on for the last 8 months or 9 months, and currently we have the calls open to fund at the regional level a set of technology infrastructures which are aligned with the smart specialization strategy, obviously, which are aligned with European current challenges, and which were within the different domains that we created. We know, that within the smart specialization strategy, we have 8 priority domains, but we did a mapping of across between priority domains and technology areas and the territories. And so we created these what we call binomials of priority that are territories within the NUTS2 North region that are propitious for installing technology infrastructures within specific domains. So we are doing that, and we are obviously articulating that with complementary sources of funding. For example, very important initiatives that were mentioned by Dominic within the European Union in the last few years. The only one there that wasn't mentioned was the SHIPS Act, I think, which is very important also for us. For example, within the scope of the SHIPS Act, one of our technological infrastructures, INL, is going to receive a pilot line, an ASI pilot line of the JU initiative. And so that is going to allow us to reinforce significantly the technological capability of that infrastructure. And that is complementary, meaning that because that is being funded by JU with a also national fund that is actually coming through ANI, we can divert the fund for complementing that, and so make sure that we are strengthening some specific areas of intervention. So I think that this complementary between regional, national, and European funds is very virtuous. It is also very important because it gives us some comfort that we are co-funding for example, technology infrastructures, which are also receiving European funds. So there is multiple validation levels. It means that by nature, there will be articulation, there will be co-work with other regions. And so that is something that helps a lot, these aspects that were mentioned of sustainability, of long-term investment. Because if we are funding an infrastructure that we think currently might be interesting, but there is no long-term plan, it has no sustainability because it's not fully articulated with European policy, then within 3-4 years, we have the infrastructure built, but then we have a problem because it's going to be asking for funds. And I think that tackles one of the issues that we need to work on, which is fragmentation. There are multiple areas of research, multiple areas of technological development, and we need to focus on the ones that we can make a bigger difference. We need to bet on the ones that currently enable Europe to have a strategic geopolitical point of view. So it means that it should help us strengthen our autonomy, our sovereignty. It should help us also be competitive on a global level on the current hot markets. But we cannot forget this issue of long-term. Stability is critical for industry. It is one of the major things that companies tell me when I try to bring some foreign investment, for example, to North, is always, okay, they look at how stable the region is. Are we very dependent on the political landscape, which is changing daily? in Portugal yesterday, even on a European scale. 2 days ago, it was not completely sure how we're going to fund the Defense Act. Yesterday, suddenly there is probably an option to use PRR funds for that. So the landscape is changing quickly. We need to adapt to that, but we cannot forego the long-term plan. We need to only bet on things that we are certain that will have stability on long term, and we need the mechanisms that will allow them also to be comfortable that there is indeed a long-term agenda for them.
Thank you very much, and make a very good point on the stability, and we'll come back to that, definitely. I think it's probably one of the most critical issues. But we have here the European dimension and the national dimension. I'd like to start with a question, or maybe a provocative question, that's not the idea, about the European dimension. So we have a well-established research infrastructure network and system that has been around for 2 decades or so, and now we are discussing this new approach to technology infrastructures. But in my view, they are sort of on a continuous spectrum, right? In the sense there are many RIs that could also be TIs, and there'll be maybe some TIs that also support research and so on. So by having these two, I guess, separate or at least independent initiatives on TIs and RIs, is this the best way to go? Should we just go for an unified RTI initiative coordinated jointly? I don't know if, I'm sure this has been discussed before, but I'd like to know if you have any ideas on this, Helene or Dominique.
Does this work? Yeah. Okay, thanks. So I can start very briefly. I mean, indeed, we want to have this holistic approach. That's very clear. This was underlined by the member states in council conclusions that these infrastructures are part of the same ecosystem, and we try to follow that up also with the expert group. That it was quite clear that we need to have a holistic view. At the level of the Commission, we are right now working on a new joint European strategy for research and technology infrastructure. So we want to work at the level of the ecosystem. At the same time, we also need to recognize...
However, when you present it here, it looks like TIs are one thing and RIs are another thing. Did I understand correctly?
Well, I presented the work on technology infrastructures explicitly, and indeed, they are two different things. I mean, I would actually argue that you cannot be both. You can be one or the other, but you can have functions that would be similar to each other, depending on in which area you operate. In some areas, this blending is stronger. In some areas, the separation is also much more visible. But we want to approach this at the EU level. We want to approach this holistically. So we recognize the differences and the specific challenges that are linked to each type of infrastructures, and they are different because when you, as a research infrastructure, when you primarily focus on serving scientific excellence, scientific discovery, then your landscape and your modus operandi is different than when you are helping companies to develop and upscale their technologies. And there are many complexities that are around that and many nuances that make the operational models completely different. At the same time, as you said, we need a system in which we can actually benefit from both, and we can build synergies between both. And with what we are working right now at the EU level, this joint strategy is exactly aiming to do this. It aims to recognize the differences and address the challenges that are specific for RIs and TIs separately. And it will also have a part which will be an ecosystem building part to strengthen the relationships and the synergies between the two types of infrastructures and address the challenges, those challenges that are common, to address them together.
Yeah, thank you. Helena, want to add something to that?
Thank you. Well, actually, I completely agree with what Dominic said, and I agree also with your constate today. We have two separate worlds, more or less. At least one world is recognized, has been recognized since 20 years already, European research infrastructures and technology infrastructures, which try to show up since also several years, but I think it wasn't, this reflection hasn't been structured yet, and now we are trying to structure it and to see how we can approach these two worlds and make them closer, because we need to make them closer actually, and it is a continuum, as you said. So now this is the moment. This is where we are discussing these points also at the European level, at IRAC, and yes, we will see. We shouldn't forget that the users have different objectives. The users come also from different worlds, actually. and at a certain point we have this gray zone where the research infrastructures from both sides can also have these missions from both sides. We should be attentive at all this. The funding needs are not the same, the funding engagements are not the same, and the funders are not the same as well. So the landscape is very, very complex, actually. That's why we are trying to find an optimal solution now.
Thank you. We'll come back to the European dimension, especially in the context of this complex geopolitical situation. But I'd like to go a bit now to the national side. And I have, in my experience, I have some experience on this. I have two major problems with the national side. One is sustainability and long-term perspectives of funding, which basically does not exist, essentially. And the second one is the complexity of the bureaucracy. You referred to the digital innovation hubs, which we found, at least the one I was involved, is almost unusable because of the complexity of the funding mechanism. I apologize if I'm going to direct, but we don't have much time. Maybe you can, Sylvia or Ricardo, maybe you can make a comment on these two questions. Ricardo already commented on long term, but maybe can we have we don't have Madalena here. Can we have like a long-term strategy where an infrastructure has funding for the next 5 years? I'm not asking much, right? Just 5 years. I mean, usually you go year, 2 years. So.
What I can advance that we are thinking about stability and about the new program for the collabs and also for the CTIs, the funding base. But we are now working on, and we are thinking for further the stability for the next 5 years or 10 years. And we are working on, and we are working on trying to find out.
When you say we, is ANI, is FCT, is the
ANI,
government?
FCT, and the government. We are now start working on, just for Canadians. But
at least for a few weeks, right? At least
yes, the few weeks,
yeah.
but now you understand this is, yesterday we have the news, so I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, but now we are now working on to have more stability for the next 5 or 10 years, which is wishful. But we also have the problem, I already told about the fragmentation, and we also have, I'm talking about technology infrastructures because the research infrastructures I'm not so aware because it's the FCT scope, but we really need to create more stronger infrastructures that can be aligned with the national and European politics, and also now it's changing so fast. Now the defense is a very huge aim, so we need to have the flexibility to work on that. And I do believe that the infrastructure technologies are the key for that, because they know the technology, they are between the knowledge, between the scientific knowledge and the companies that applying knowledge. So they are flexible to fertilizing, using the knowledge and using the fertilizing the knowledge between the different sectors, and could be the links together.
But if I may interrupt, if you think about the digital innovation hubs, which are supposed to sit on that space, right, interconnecting the universities with, but we are, do you deem them a success in the sense that people are using them and they are being executed, or do I have the wrong impression?
No, you don't have. No, you don't have the wrong impression. Here in Portugal, as all you know, we have the problem with digital innovation we have to put in place, because it starts with several bottlenecks and comes to an INESC last year. So we are trying to put it all together, and now I think finally we can put it all the rules together, which was not very, which is a new measure for us, because it's not only basic funding, it's all the service, because it's funding also the service provided for digital innovation hubs, which is not a normal funding for Portugal, and also I do believe that in Europe is not so normal as well. So it brings problems with state aids as well, because we are finding digital innovation hubs, and indirectly the companies, so the state aid is also a problem. So we have to overlap all this, which unfortunately was not
But
so fast.
we really have to work on that and get that done.
Yeah, I
because
think
otherwise
that
we'll
finally
just have
I think we established all the rules, and now it's just putting in place where we have an year for that. Yes.
Ricardo, do you have a more stable operating mode at the local, at the regional level, or you also suffer from this?
No, as you know, we are dependent on a regional program, which is of a few years, and so we are always unsure of what will come afterwards, and so we cannot commit with our stakeholders, with our actors, to longer-term financing schemes. However, if you allow me two quick notes, with a footnote. The footnote is, it's very important always to clarify what things are. And so I think that it's excellent that we reached a description of what is a technology infrastructure, because we needed that. We need to have clear description of what is a research infrastructure and what is a technological infrastructure for several reasons. And we notice that when we are, for example, opening calls to fund these things, there is a lot of ambiguity. We have entities that position themselves on both sides, and so that usually is a problem. The two notes that I wanted to make is first on institutional position that we have and a personal note. So on the institutional position, the North Region Coordination Commission always has, for the last several years, said that science should be discussed and policy should be established on a national level. And so we work together with FCT, with ANI, on defining that on a national level. And for example, when we now have the funding scheme for research infrastructures, we are going to use the national mapping of research infrastructures as a basis for that. And whilst on the technological infrastructure, we believe that it should serve more on a local basis, because it is much more locally adapted to the companies that we have, to the different stakeholders. And so on the technological infrastructures, and this is said on the reports around this topic, are critical to bridge the R&D valley of death, right? Because very often we have R&D which is never translated. And so we need very good, very stable research technology infrastructures which solve the problems that were identified also in this survey of the 300 stakeholders. So we need better access. We need to solve the PI problems. And more than anything, for example, here we lack information of what is available. And this is an immensely important initiative that is being taken on mapping what is around. Because often next door there is a synchrotron or there is an SEM that we can use, and we are trying to put it on a budget of a research project. So this, we need to solve that so that we don't waste money.
It's not the same thing as having your own synchrotron, right?
But
anyway,
we need to learn to share like small kids.
Yes,
if you allow me just 10 seconds for the quick personal note. I think that on the technological infrastructures, the issues of PI will be always very critical, and the infrastructures need to be very careful on how they handle that. We have great examples here in the north of infrastructures that gain the confidence of companies because of how they manage that, but it's not clear-cut. But on the research infrastructures, I think that as much as possible, information should be shared. That should be a basilar principle. Even yesterday, I was hearing about the AlphaFold initiative and how that allowed us to now reach a database of 200 million protein structures that was only possible with AI, but it was only possible because information, the background information that was on the basis of that was open. So that is something that also helps differentiating better these two infrastructures.
I think the people that run the RIs are pretty much open in their approach. Sometimes there are difficulties with data privacy and other stuff.
I just want to stress a little thing I think is very important, because is the service, the visibility is a problem here in Portugal and also in Europe. Because what happens very much in digital innovation hubs and test beds, it's now the second phase, after all the rules are established, is how we can make visible for the companies to provide, the companies know what they are doing, the services. This is a very important thing, because at the end, the companies don't care receive the research in sort of infrastructure or technology infrastructure. They only want their problem solved. This is the problem. The problem.
Thank you. So we are running out of time. I will just finish with a final question for which I ask a complex one. But I mean, Europe has at least the fame of moving slowly, right? I mean, we take like 5 or 10 years to decide anything, and now the world is changing every day, and now we have defense, and tomorrow I don't know what we'll have. Do you think we'll be able to adapt this in this area to the need for the new needs? I mean, the new priorities of Europe? Will we have a couple of TIs or RIs that are related with defense and whatever comes about? Do we have the ability to do that in the short term, or we're not very optimistic?
I think in many ways we don't have that, but I think our objective should be to be able to do this. And just to make one example, I spoke about what was done for the aviation sector. It actually took the initial activities to map the ecosystem, to map infrastructures, and to identify the gaps in conversation with the industry. Started in 2017, first reports appeared 2019. The roadmap with the list of infrastructures that need to be upgraded or developed was validated last year, and it's still without money to actually fund the investments. So that is a good exercise, and it was impactful in the sense how to learn how to do these things. But we need to be much, much faster, and we need to have a much more direct connection of funding to the priorities that we will identify at European level. And I think that here actually the concept of a competitiveness fund, however it will be legally structured then with the framework program in other programs, this is a real opportunity if we do it right to cut short the delays that we have between decision making and making the investments. I think that on decisions, when we have a critical need, we demonstrate that we can move fast. And the recent developments on AI, I think, demonstrate we can take big decisions very quickly. And now we have some tools to follow up with investments when there is a very strong political priority, but we don't have that capacity if we do a more general horizon scanning for something that may not be as visible as AI nowadays. And we need that actually across the board. And I think that what we try to work towards in the next year with the new MFF, with the new concept for the framework program, for me what would be very important is to have this investment arm in infrastructures readily available to be made operational when we decide on a priority that we have a common priority to invest. And that needs to bridge in all kinds of funding and pull in all kinds of funding that may be available at European, national, private sector, and regional levels to then make these investments effectively, quickly. Because if not, Americans or the Chinese will simply be faster.
Thank you, Dominique. Any final quick note?
Well, I'm actually very optimistic, and I mean, certainly the things are moving slowly in Europe, but I think today we have already a good basis to go quick because we have done already all this analysis. Now we need to take decisions, and actually, as COVID showed, when we have some crisis, it's difficult certainly, but it also helps us to move and to take decisions quickly. And I think well, maybe we will not have an ideal solution very soon, but we are moving really, I think, in a good direction. And
Thank you.
let's hope for the best.
Thank you, Elena. Silvia?
Just a quick remark. I think that to answer your question, I think that we all have the knowledge, but we need to learn to be more connected together and be more faster getting decisions, and this is all national and European level, and put all the programs that are running in Europe align and have decisions and define which sectors that we need to go forward.
Thank you very much. Ricardo?
I already spoke too much, so I'll only say one sentence. I think that we need to be positive. that maybe we can overcome this issue that I mentioned before of fragmentation. We do have the capability, we do have the possibility to be globally competitive, but unless we solve the fragmentation at the various levels quickly, we will not be.
Thank you very much. On this positive note, I thank you very much for your contributions, and we close. Thank you very much.
Let's begin our discussion.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's both a pleasure and honor to be here today at home and talking about a theme that is so dear to me and with this great panel. Thank you all for being here and share with us your expertise and your experience, and particularly for those coming from abroad is highly appreciated. So we had the first panel was on the politician, on the political side. We are more on the stakeholder side, so we don't have political limitations with the current situation, so we can still make our speech very freely. And the novelty and uncertainty and risks of research and innovation call for test, validation, dissemination, demonstration activities hand in hand with education and training. And these are perhaps the most relevant activities supported or developed by both research and technological infrastructures. And despite this common description, as we heard in the morning, research and technology infrastructures have complementary and in some areas overlapping positioning and activities, and they are not equal. They have different objectives, different target audience, perform different set of services, needing for that different skills and resources. And this means also, of course, that the supporting policies and programs need to be different, although they should be aligned and complementary and coherent. So let's talk about this and discuss how these infrastructures and their home organizations deal with these issues like market positioning and fit, 360 degrees collaboration, because we need to collaborate, upstream, downstream, to the sides, and also governance, funding and sustainability, benefiting from your concrete examples. And this is very important that we have organizations here that can speak with experience. And so the format plan is that we start with a short introduction for each one of you. And I will start with Bertrand, if you don't mind. And I will ask you to, if possible, in your introductory speech, just to highlight this theme, which is CA has this characteristic of operating both research and technology infrastructure. So you know the difference. So how to describe them? How do we need them both? A topic that was already presented in the morning. Which are the main difference? So if you can address this topic, well, thank you very much. I would be appreciated. Thank you very much. So 3 minutes, the 4 minutes introduction. Okay, thank you. Can we open the mic?
It should be better now.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, INESC, you, José Carlos, and Ricardo, for the invitation. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. And for my introductory remark, I would say it's true at CEA, we run both research infrastructures and technology infrastructures. So the first point would be to say that we are convinced that to be both at excellent research level in the global competition and to support industrial competitiveness, you need both, and you need experimental tools. So this is a very strong point, and it should be part of any research and innovation policy to make clear that experimental facilities are needed. We have an EU research infrastructure policy for now more than 20 years, and it's very effective. We need something of the same kind for technology infrastructures because there are some similarities, but also some differences between both objects, I would say. If we talk about the themes that you mentioned in the panel on governance and sustainability, if I start with the governance issue, what is clear is that research infrastructures are meant to develop the best knowledge production, mostly for academics, although I know there is also relations with industry, but this is the core mission of research infrastructure. When you talk about technology infrastructure, you are led to work in collaboration and for industry, so your stakeholders, your users are not exactly the same, and this has consequences in terms of governance of the infrastructure itself. For RTIs, since you work with industry, you need specific, I would say, skills or capabilities in terms of IP management, liability, this type of elements, which are not so present in a research infrastructure where you work with academics. And the other aspect is that the governance in terms of policy at national or EU level, of course, because technology infrastructure are meant to serve industrial competitiveness, you need to incorporate industry into your strategy, into the definition of your objectives, which is not so much the case for research infrastructure. So typically, S3, which is a very efficient governance structure for research infrastructure policy between Ministry of Research, academic communities, would not be exactly replicable for RTIs, because you need to have somewhere the presence of industrial stakeholders. So this, I would say, is for governance. And then sustainability, very quickly. My main message here is that there it's common for RIs and TIs. When you talk about infrastructure, there is a strong focus on CapEx, the investment you need to build the infrastructure, and sometimes we tend to forget the needs in terms of OPEX, operational cost, which are very important in the long run. So any strategy for RIs and TIs should take into account these two elements, which are necessary even before you start working on it, even before you start the project. So this should be part of the reflection. And then, of course, the difference maybe is that for research infrastructure, by design, it's open very widely to academic communities on a national, transnational, European or international basis. With TIs, since you work with industry, there are some issues such as exclusivity on some specific application field. And so the way you manage your economic model can be different. I could elaborate, but I will stop here for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Anna, so your initial introduction also, if you could highlight a little bit the challenges of running a distributed network, because this is something that we are not so common. Usually think about physical infrastructures with laboratories. No, in your case, it's a bit different. So which are the challenges really linked to managing a European-wide distributed network? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not only that question, it's just a topic for your introduction.
Thank you. And I would like also to start by thanking INESC and Ricardo for inviting us here. MIRI is a distributed infrastructure, and I share a lot of the concerns that Bertrand has just shared. So I think that for distributed infrastructures, and in our case it is an infrastructure for microbial resources, the CapEx was not there. Or, I mean, there was no investment of CapEx, there was investment on OPEX, and the CapEx was put at the national level. It was pre-existing. In some cases, it is at the forefront, and that's the benefit from being a research infrastructure. because when you are in the queue and very much behind, you will always see where you want to be in a few years. So we need to pay attention to this great heterogeneity, because we are not single-sided, and we are very diverse from member state to member state. And within each member state, there is a lot of diversity. And by the way, the microbial collections preserve biodiversity. So we could say that ultimately it is critical that every biodiversity is preserved. In terms of funding, we have 3 layers of funding that are not always there. So one that is always there is the core budget from the member states. So every member state has an annual membership contribution. Then there is this competitive funding layer where we apply for projects. And for instance, I would like to open here a parenthesis, but we had just won an InfraTech, and in InfraTechs we are invited to co-develop with the industry, and we lack the skills of IP, which can be very useful. So I see here a possible engagement with TIs in the country that could perhaps support in this way. And then there should be in place as well, and it is in some countries and not in others, some continuous funding from the national nodes that would support the upgrade and the continuous development of the resource in the country. Because ultimately, we are service providers for the research community, but in a way, our partners, the culture collections from the member states, are also our users. So I would say that, summarizing and for a quick start, this is the major challenge that we are facing.
Thank you very much. So Ana Teresa, now back to you for your introduction. In your case, I'm particularly interested to understand the challenges of an infrastructure that deals mainly with information, data, knowledge. So it's not so much with products, physical products, it's knowledge. Of course, there is a huge amount of challenges from privacy to cybersecurity. So which are the characteristics that such an infrastructure has that is a little bit more special than or different from the other ones?
Okay, so good morning. The first thing is to make people understand that data is an infrastructure, not only roads and bridges.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes it's difficult to understand that the infrastructure to store and to make data available to others is really a huge infrastructure that needs resources and that needs a strategy for sustainability. Perhaps I will put here my hat of as a head of node of the Elixir Portugal. So I also represent in the country the Elixir Portugal, that is one of the nodes of an infrastructure, an European infrastructure that is Elixir, that deals with life and health data. Okay, and as Anna was saying, because Anna was involved many years ago in this node, so at European level, we have this countries fund that will support some operation of these infrastructures, but then this goes to the national level. And at the national level, we don't have that support. So this makes things a bit strange, because we have a support from the country to the European level, but then at the national level, we don't have that support. So we need to replicate the model that we have at European level. So inside Portugal, we are also a distributed infrastructure. Okay, so we have partners from all over the country. And of course, we also have fees from the partners to support the basic operation of the node. But then we need to think that we are working for the country. So we need to build, in the case of Elixir, we are building the infrastructures to deal with, for example, health-sensitive data, okay? And if we don't have a policy in the country that really helps these infrastructures to think what is to build a data infrastructure for example, sensitive data, that will support all the research in the country, it's not a node like this one that will be able to move forward and to push things forward. And this is what we see not only in Portugal, but in many other countries in Europe. On other countries, it's not like this. It's not like this in France. It's not like this in Finland, Norway, Denmark. So that the countries decided to have institutions that are there not only to provide the computational resources, but to provide the human resources to deal with the data, to store the databases, to annotate the databases, to make the databases available. So what we are having now in Portugal, and let me tell you, this is, I think it's a nice example. There is a, sorry.
It's okay.
There is an initiative that is the 1 Million Genome Initiative. So it's an European initiative to build, the huge database with 1 million genomes from Europeans. And each country will contribute with a part. And of course, we have funding from Europe, but that funding is just supported in 50% because it's S3 fund. So in the country needs to put the other part. We have that part in Portugal? No, we don't. So we try with the partners, with the institutes like INESC TEC and other institutes to also apply to European projects, to apply to partners' fees, to try to get that fund, 50% fund, to build the pipeline, the software pipeline that will deal with the data. But now, this is for the country. So where should we put this database? And now I'm knocking. FCCN, FCT, can you keep me there the sensitive human data? No, I can't. So I go to INSA. Okay, you will have the sequencing machines. Can you hold this? No, I can't. Can I go to the universities? They say, no, we are not responsible for sensitive data. So what's going on? We need in the country a strategy to deal with the research data for all the institutes, for all the projects, not only data that comes from normal projects. And we see this happening in other countries in Europe. So we have the skills, so we have people that knows how to set up the pipelines, we have the human resources, and we don't have a strategy. And this is bad.
Yeah. Thank you. Very, very clear message, that one. Fernando, you are a person from industry, actually from an SME, which are, say, supposedly the main beneficiaries and the most needed beneficiaries of technological infrastructures mainly, but you're also an experienced guy of working with interface organizations, RTOs, technology centers. So in your introductory speech, from the industry, and particularly from SME side, which are the most relevant functions, activities? What do you need mainly from research and well, mainly from technology and infrastructures, I will assume, but it's up to you to decide that.
Well, first of all, thanks for INESC TEC and Ricardo and Caldeira for the invitation. So we are a SME, we basically manufacture technological advanced equipments. But being an SME, we don't have internally the resources that we need and the knowledge that we need to address all the challenges that we face. So that is the main topic, the main thing that we ask, and we have been collaborating with R&D entities for many, many years, okay? INESC TEC, for instance, but also other kinds of entities like INESG, and the ones that are more close to the market, which are the technological centers of normally by each sector. Okay, but so before right now I believe that I should start with one of the first topics that Portuguese recommendations on FP10 made was the same approach leads to the same results. And I believe that what we have been doing, and it has been very good, okay, it is probably not at all accomplishing what we need to do according with, for instance, the Draghi report, okay. Since the Draghi report was made, a lot of things have changed. We see that changing every year, every day, every week, right now, in fact, okay. So basically, we need to change the way that things are doing, okay. And having said that, this means creating impact. We as SMEs, we must grow. Okay, there are lots of ways to do that, and obviously we need RTIs to help us on doing it through the knowledge. Okay, but on the other hand, and this was already addressed on the last panel, okay, the RTIs itself, mainly in Portugal, they also need to grow. They also need to acquire scale. That is a topic that we should also address in Portugal for sure, okay? Because right now, we just have too many contact points. For a SME like us, fortunately, we have been working with the right partners for many decades, but for, I cannot even imagine what will be to put my feet on one guy, one entrepreneur that is now starting, and okay, what is my contact point? Where should I go to if I need this kind of knowledge, okay? So one idea is the clusters, okay? That is something that is working, some of them at least. Some others probably should get the right evaluation, okay? Digital innovation hubs, they've already been addressed also on the last panel, okay? That was a topic to try to solve it. Probably not yet working at all, but okay, that is also one way of putting the RTIs working together. But I believe that topics are scale, and then obviously for that we need collaboration.
Thank you very much. So let's now, after this introductory round, let's try to focus a bit on two topics that were mainly. So which one? I will link some of them: collaboration and governance, because I really believe that this need to collaborate 360 degrees around this infrastructure is really a challenge, and this is strongly linked to the governments also, to the governance models, and then let's try to make a first round on this, and then a second round more looking to the funding challenge, because as we've seen, this is also an important issue. So regarding collaboration, it's not only around, as I said, it's not only around between, in the same layer, between research infrastructures or between technology infrastructures. It's also the collaboration between research infrastructures and technology infrastructure, between technology infrastructures and the industries and sectors. So in this panorama, how do you think we can make these links more efficient and effective? Because if something is clear for us today is that we need speed. Well, we need speed and we need to be efficient, of course, effective, so we need to really transfer and get, but the speeding up of the innovation cycle, let's put it like this, puts a lot of pressure or additional pressure on these interfaces between these let's put it, these three levels. And of course, this has very much to do with the governance, how we organize these kind of interactions. And so I would like you to make a first round on, again, from your experience, from your cases, how do you think this collaboration can be improved? You know, I spoke with several people in this expert group, and you know, we are saying, you know, sometimes we forget that the main customers of research infrastructures are not sometimes the companies or industries, it's actually the technology infrastructures. And sometimes we are linked and we try to forget this connection. So how can we improve this flow of knowledge and people, by the way, between these different levels, and how the governance models, the way we organize ourselves, how we get in touch between ourselves can help or can hamper this, okay? So, Ana Teresa, can you start now? I will go this way.
As you said at the beginning, we don't need to be politically correct. No. Yeah. So, that's good. So I think the first thing that we need to do is to stop inventing new designations and new things. So we have research institutes, we have universities, we have research infrastructures, we have technology infrastructures, we have clusters, we have collabs, we have digital innovation hubs. So now we will going to have edX. So someone please stop inventing things. Let's just for us to start to understand how we can collaborate. So the first thing that is very important for me that represent a research infrastructure is that for our associates that are the universities and the research institutes, understand that this is a way for them to collaborate not only between each other, but with other institutes in Europe. And this is our main focus now at Elixir Portugal, is to bring collaborations between all the institutes in Portugal and other institutes at the European level. Now, if you ask me, now we go to the more technology transfer, when the groups are developing a project and they want to interact with a company. Research infrastructures, they want to interact with the company. Then technology infrastructures, they want to interact with the company. Then clusters, they want to interact with the company. So everybody wants to do everything, okay? So, and this fragments the ecosystem, and we just lose the resources and the energy. So I think it's time for us to just design the architecture of all this big system and to try to make people understand the flows of the communication. If you need that, you should contact that person. As you were saying, at some point we don't know which person we should contact. Okay, and then all the mechanisms are appearing, and another, okay, this is a message perhaps for Portugal. If we are surviving, we cannot dream, and we are always surviving. So sometimes it's difficult to approach other infrastructures, other things, because in the daily basis we are just surviving, and the energy goes all on that thing. So once again, we need some basic level for people to have time to think and to communicate. But what we are doing at Elixir Portugal at this stage is to make the universities and the research centers to communicate, to connect, to participate in projects with other research infrastructures. Now we are participating in a project with MIRI, okay? It will be impossible if Anna was not a previous manager of Elixir Portugal. So, but this is how we are working now.
So are you saying that we should try to segment the interventions between the different type of infrastructures?
I think so. It's like the same thing in Portugal, that like these regions that we have, that everybody needs to be specialized in everything. Okay, so you need to split the money around the country. This is quite difficult for an infrastructure that is a distributed infrastructure. How should I apply as Elixir to national funding if I have the fund on the regional, in the regions? And I have one partner from one region that is supporting in 80%, one partner for another region that is supporting in 40%. How do we manage an infrastructure like that? It's impossible. Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Anna Teresa, you have Anna, you have an extra layer of interaction with your European-wide network.
So I would say that we need to start by improving our communication. I would say we have 3 things where we need to excel to overcome these barriers. We need to be visible, we need to facilitate access, and we need to create impact. And without clear communication amongst us, but also to the users, with the stakeholders, with the funding, with the policymakers. And I think huge steps are being taken. They are not just yet enough. So regarding the problematic that Ana Teresa mentioned, I'm not sure I'm in favor of segmentation. This is not for me the point. The point is the knowledge of the workflow of the players. It was great to hear Dominic earlier defining clearly what is what, because sometimes we don't know. And if we know what is what, then we can understand, because I'm personally against silos. I like the flows between what is different. But I believe that for us within the ecosystem, it is already difficult to understand who is who and doing what. And for the users, it is even more difficult. So all infrastructures need to work on their communication better. I think that who runs the policy, the European scientific and innovation strategy, needs to be more clear and support us in our communication. And that we need to work on our visibility better in a more professional way, but we also need to facilitate the access so that everyone can know that well, if you need microbial resources, go to MIRI, irrespectively if you are from the industry or whatever, because if we cannot solve your problem, I will know that there is a technological infrastructure that can do it. So I think that the workflow of information needs to be there and is not clear at the moment, particularly because there is always something new being created, but also because the strategy is not clear even for us.
Thank you very much. Bertrand, just before I give you the floor, I was just looking at Dominic because, you know, in this task group, expert group that we are in Brussels, these discussions are very interesting, and the fact that we end up agreeing among that we have 3 types of infrastructures, and that's it. And all the other types fit into these 3 groups. I think it was a major achievement of that expert group because, you know, the tendency was to start making a very long list of different types of infrastructure, and this only leads to confusion. It really leads to confusion. Bertrand, like INESC TEC, I mentioned before, we also operate research infrastructures and technology infrastructures, and even internally, sometimes we have some difficulties to make these connections, these collaborations. I imagine that maybe you have also, but you have also the connections outside of CEA. So how do you see this collaboration, and how the government model can help on this?
Yeah, well, I would say that we consider that research and technology infrastructures are drivers of ecosystem, basically. When you have a good infrastructure, be it research or technology, you attract not only a research community, but also companies to work with you, and often they locate their R&D labs around infrastructure to get easier access. This is where you can create or support startups, and so this is the virtuous dimension of research and technology infrastructure. But the point is that they are usually very local, sometimes national, but very local. And it's a good thing in a way, but our problem is that we cannot afford to recreate in each region of Europe a strong ecosystem on all strategic technologies. So we need to have an approach that makes us more efficient in the way we allocate the resources. And so we need to make this ecosystem more transnational at EU level. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we make sure that SME in Portugal knows and have access to an infrastructure in Finland, for example? This creates a question on access condition, of course, but I would say also the first step would be to make sure that there is a common vision of sectors or communities on what is already available in Europe and what are the gaps. So this idea, which was discussed earlier in the previous session, of organizing mapping of facilities or schemes or infrastructure is very important, and of course it can be done only efficiently at European level. We need to organize private and public stakeholder communities, and ask them 2 things basically. What is your collective vision of the research roadmap needed to be competitive in hydrogen, in AI or whatever? Once they have agreed on that, we should ask them a second element to reach this objective. What are the infrastructures you need? What are those who are already available in Europe and where? And what are those which are missing? And once you have that, you can create some instruments to facilitate access from one country to another. Of course, the EU program is instrumental in that. There have been tentative or instruments already created. You can discuss their efficiency, their complexity, but I mean, it's the right move forward. But before putting instruments, we could start by having a clear vision of what is available. I think in the report of the expert group, that was quite a strong result of the survey to users is the lack of visibility of what service can be offered by what infrastructure. So let's start by doing this, and I think the rest will come quite naturally. I'm not saying it will be easy, but if we don't do that as a start, we will have difficulties being efficient in the instruments.
Thank you very much. Fernando, you already mentioned, you already mentioned this difficulty of visibility, you know, for an SME, it's, you know, try to navigate only in the national landscape. It's already a big challenge. Now, if you consider that you should also see and use the ones that are abroad, it will be an increasing issue. So I ask your opinion on how do you see this possibility? The idea we have is particularly for technological infrastructures. Their intervention when it comes to SMEs is rather limited. So which means usually an SME goes to the infrastructures that are nearby. I don't know if it's 100 kilometers or 150 or 50, depends also on the highways, transportation, because these are real facts of life. No, I don't think we have, I think there are statistics on the research infrastructure. We don't have statistics at European level that we can say, you know, which is the distance of most of the customers of that infrastructure. But I suspect that if we do it, it will be rather limited, okay? For practical reasons from the company side, I will go also for the funding reasons, but I'll leave that to the second round. So, but from an SME, first, how do you see this possibility of collaboration if possible, if there is the visibility for many of these services that companies need to go abroad? And also, how do you think that companies, either individually or organizing in clusters or in associations like it was in many cases in Portugal, can actually have a word on saying on the strategy, on the priorities that these infrastructures are developing for them? Because we know that in many cases when the funding comes only from the public side and there is not such an interactions, we know from the past that sometimes the end result of the infrastructure, then the services and the knowledge is not fit to what really industry needs. So how can industry help to shape, the funding comes later, to shape, and how can industry collaborate with these infrastructures, knowing that in some cases there may be competing companies there. So let's not forget also that from the practical point of view. But how can industry help to shape how these infrastructures perform in the market?
Okay. Well, you made two questions. Okay, let me start with the first one because it has been addressed with Bertrand and also Anna. First of all, is the mapping of the expertises of everybody that is on board, in this case in Europe, for sure. One of the things that we should more and more get careful about is what kind of partnerships we make. So it means nowadays it seems that is in Europe, okay, more and more we should consider Europe, okay? And that is a key point. So where are the expertise, okay? Then obviously all these entities need communication, like Anna stressed out, okay? SMEs are not the strongest in communication, but we must admit that majority of RTIs are not as well, basically because it's normally they communicate for the funds, so it's for the incentives that they have to communicate. It's basically human nature, okay? So we need to put the industry on top of their communication priorities, otherwise we will never achieve, and this comes to the second question, which is how do we put the industry or the economy overall, because it's not only industry, it's also services, okay, on the board, on this on the priorities that RTIs define themselves. Obviously, there are a lot of ways of doing that. For instance, just here in the University of Porto, we have several governance models, okay? So I will not defend one against the others, but it's somehow the industry, or I mean the economy, must be on the board. Otherwise, there is no point. Obviously, that creates a lot of bureaucratic issues. Another way is to put these entities working together with the economy on clusters or on the associations, and that way they will also feel, okay, what are the requests? My main concern here and right now is we must achieve impact and we must do it fast, because our challenges are moving every day, okay, and we are changing every day. And let's face it, Europe is not is not so well fast in taking decisions. So that is our biggest challenge: how to do it fast.
Oh, thank you very much. So now let's talk a little bit about funding, the interesting one. So we heard about that, you know, infrastructures have different types of funding needs. So CapEx, when they are created, CapEx also when they need to be updated, because let's not forget that after creation and after some times of operations, if we are talking about technological infrastructures, we need to update them. Not only the infrastructure itself, but also the competence, in many cases, the competence of the persons that are operating the infrastructure. And you know, with the speeding up of the technological development, this need is becoming more and more frequent, and the investments are getting more and more bigger and bigger. So we have the CapEx for the creation, but also the CapEx for the update. Then we have the OpEx for the operation, the base operation of keeping the, let's say, the team, the basic functionalities. And then we have the funding for the activities, either projects, contracts, whatever. So we have this, you can add more if it's the case. Then we have different funding sources. So we have funding sources that can be public, more from the science part, more from the economic part, let's say public, or national, regional, European. We also have the funding from the companies, from the industry, from the economy, which is, of course, very, very important, mainly for the technological infrastructures. And then now we have this view on European, national, and regional level. So now the third dimension is precisely in this landscape of activities and fundings, what makes sense that is funded at European level, what makes sense that is funded at, for example, interregional level, and what makes sense that is funded at national, regional level. So this is a kind of sophisticated framework also that we have to navigate in our days. And it's getting, again, more and more complex. On a certain way, I think that's a positive thing, because this will help us to have this more integrated, this allow us to be able to have this more integrated and coherent vision on infrastructures. But of course, it's a big challenge. And we just have to remember again what happened with digital innovation hubs and how a theoretically good idea had a terrible implementation, not only at national level, but also at the problem started at European level. Let's not forget about that. So we have to be careful, because this is sophisticated from the political point of view and from the theoretical point of view. It sounds nice, very nice, and even not very complicated. But we know that when it comes to the implementation, they have big challenges. So just 2 or 3 questions, then you can open others. Is what in this part, what makes sense that is funded at European, at national, regional level? What it makes sense that is funded more from the private side, more from the public side, considering what we mentioned before, and how you see from your experience, if you have some good examples on, for example, how we try to align, combine different funding sources to your, let's say, to your needs. Anna, can we start now with you?
Yes, thank you. So at the European level, one of the things that should be supported is the networking and the collective upgrade of the state of the art. So that I was reading in one of the presentations, I think it was Ellen's, but I'm not sure, that the Draghi report mentioned that not every member state would have the critical mass to have adequate resources at a certain level. So I think that this bringing all the member states interested in achieving that for their national communities, I think that should be supported at the European level, because in the end, everyone will benefit from there. Another thing that I would like to bring, and I think it is at the level of the European funding. I'm sure that most of you are acquainted with the European Open Science Cloud that everyone is now working on. It is more related to data. But given all this ecosystem and the need for some specialization, not isolation, but some specialization, perhaps the interplay of these different actors could continue to be fostered and supported by the Commission. I'm thinking that, for instance, InfraServes and InfraTechs, one that is to facilitate the access to services provided by different infrastructures, and the other that fosters co-development from the infrastructures and with the industry to the development of new services and products. I think that this could be an instrument, or this instrument could be upgraded to engage research infrastructures with technological infrastructures and eventually other system players that are not at the moment working together, so that they together learn how to deliver and a workflow is designed. But then also after this, I think that at the European level it is important that some sustainability of the services that prove needed, because the needs assessment is important and this afternoon's session could not be more opportune, that these services keep being provided, and that the collaborations established between the different actors for that purpose, and I mean the different infrastructures in particular, that these stay available until an assessment that would drive us in another direction, because as was being said by Fernando, the landscape is changing all the time, but perhaps 1 or 2 years it should stand for that thing. So I think that all of this, that in a way is to provide instruments to support what is being strategically designed at an upper level.
Thank you. Anna, Teresa, perhaps now.
Okay, so in the case of our data infrastructure, I think it's very relevant that all the services that are there and they contribute or they support the research at European level, they should have the support from European funding, because it's something that is impacting all the research all over Europe. And that's what we see in many resources in life and health, so that we have European funding that supports the development of those resources. But as a data, I will bring this for the data infrastructure. It is very difficult for us when we see that the funding oblige us or makes it mandatory for us, for example, to acquire equipment. Why a data infrastructure should acquire a computational infrastructure if there are many computational infrastructures that we can partner with? So if the funding comes with this obligation that we partner with other infrastructures and that facilitates this speciality, so if our data infrastructure can collaborate or receive funding to collaborate with a computational infrastructure that will define the infrastructure for our specific needs, that will help a lot. And that's what we are not seeing, because at the national level, all the infrastructures are supported with the same mindset. And it is quite difficult for a data infrastructure that needs more human resources than computational infrastructure, okay? But when the services are to be provided for at European level or at world level, I think we need the support for the European countries and from the European projects.
Bertrand?
Yeah, so the funding, of course, is a very important and complex question, so there are many things to say. I would like to address 2 topics you mentioned. what distribution between public and private, and what distribution between EU, national, and regional. So on public and private, there is a very simple possibility, which is the private sector, a private company, decides to have its own infrastructure, research or technology, and so they do it by themselves and there's no problem. It's quite unlikely. What we hear basically in general is that because these objects are very expensive, it's even for a large company, it's difficult to make a business case for investing in such tools, not to mention SMEs or startups. So it makes sense. There is a case for the public sector to support and also to own research or technology infrastructure, and in particular for technology infrastructure, then to provide service to the industry. Then what should be supported by the public sector? There can be a debate on whether it's only CapEx or also OpEx. Our view as a RTO is that you need both CapEx and OpEx public support, because otherwise there is no economic model for a technology infrastructure to be viable. If you only rely on the revenues that you get from the industry, usually it doesn't work, or unless you become a commercial service provider, which is not exactly the same as a technology infrastructure. And you also get into state aid problem, etc. So our view is that you need both. You need public support both for investment and operation. Then on the question of the distribution between EU, national, and regional level, well, I think there are some, as has been said already, obvious reasons for the EU to intervene when we talk about giving transnational access to some infrastructures. And we have a lot to learn here from research infrastructure policy over the last 20 years. It's the same for creating network or integration of infrastructure, like in some case it becomes distributed infrastructure across Europe. So here I don't think there is much difference in principle between RIs and TIs, maybe on the modalities a little bit. But then our view is also that we also need, which was not the case for research infrastructure, an EU investment in CapEx for technology infrastructure. For research infrastructure, I think historically the reason is that member states didn't want, by asking money from the EU, to give decision power to the EU. And it has been working like this for the last 20 years. We think, I mean, as RTO, as CEA, that on technology infrastructure, we are not in a position anymore to deny the contribution that the EU level can make, because once again, nobody will be able to afford all the investment needed in all the strategic sectors. So we need the EU to help us invest, and we have some already successful cases, I must say, on high-performance computing, Euro-HPC. The new machines are owned by the joint undertaking, so by the EU. On the CHIPS Act, the pilot lines have been co-funded by the EU, and this has allowed us to acquire the top-level equipment and facilities to stay in the race, the technological race in these fields. But of course, this comes with some conditions and counterparts, because if the EU pays, they want that access is given on a European basis. And for RIs, it's done almost by design. For TIs, it's probably something new we need to invent. In the case of microelectronics, my colleague here, David, could say a lot more than myself, but we been working over the last 1 or 2 years to organize this wider access to transnational communities to the microelectronic pilot lines at CEA. So basically, it's possible.
Yeah, thank you. Just one complementary question that you may intervene if you want also. I think that what we are looking at and what we hear is again this kind of co-funding mechanisms, so which means it's still in CapEx, it's still a major effort from the member states, but the Commission is willing or could be, like in projects, to make a top-up on that investment, as long the member states align these investments with the European priorities. But I think it's a, let's say, it's a reasonable mechanism. I think it's my personal opinion. But then this calls for the possibility that we operationalize this with the funding instruments. And and this is not only for the CapEx, but also for the access. For example, today, if you go to regional instruments that support SMEs on their projects, and you say, I want to use an infrastructure that is in another country, it's not eligible. And this is not only, by the way, it was a big surprise for me, but this is not only true for the structural funds that in Portugal are very important, because you know it's outside of the region, but even rich regions that operate with their own budget, they have this in their rules. So which means even it's not a limitation from the structural funds only, it's also a mentality limitation. They say it's our money, so it's to be spent in the region. So if we move towards a model like this, we need to push this forward with a significant transformation, not only in the regulations, the rules and regulations of the funding instruments, but also in the mentalities of people. And not only the companies or the SMEs, because probably those are the ones easier to convince if they see an advantage. It's also from the public instruments that we need to change. Because again, otherwise we'll end up with problems like we have in the digital innovation apps. I just have another issue, which is, if we do it like this, are we still able to keep it, let's say, fair for all the countries and the regions that are willing to invest? Because if they are not willing, they don't invest. But countries with more limitations will always have a problem to enter in these networks. If this is a decision done mainly at European level and for a limited number of sectors like we hear today. No, but go ahead.
Well, of course, I fully agree that, first of all, this system works if when there is EU decision or priorities for investment, first, you need alignment of national programs, which is not done by definition. And actually, historically, I think also in the research infrastructure, the fact that there is an EU policy being set up early 20s created an obligation for national governments to have their national policies on research infrastructure, which were not necessarily so strongly organized as they are today. So we might end up with having this process for TIs. Fully agree that if we go into this direction, there will be a change of mind necessary at regional, national level, but also with EU instrument, because in some cases, access to infrastructure funded by the EU require that the user comes from another country than the infrastructure. So if you are a French SME wanting to access a French infrastructure, you're not allowed to use EU money, which is not, I mean, if you think through, why not? You see? And then on the question of who will be able to afford that because of disparities of region, I think there we come back to this idea of smart specialization. Not everybody, once again, will be able to pay for everything. It's not about poorest or richest region. No region, even the richest, will not be able to afford all infrastructure and all access to everything. So each one of us should be having a strategy at government level, regional or national, on which topics, technologies, segment of industrial sector we want to put our money, and I think it's a good thing. We need to go through this process because once again we cannot stay in the same situation of fragmentation between 27 member states and I don't know how many dozens of regions.
Thank you. I will come back to you if you want to comment also on this. But Fernando, again, from the industry side, how do you see that you, industry, can fund and contribute to the funding of this system, and with that, somehow also make sure that what is done is relevant for industry? So which type of functions, which type of activities you see that are activities that can be funded by industry?
Okay, so first of all, if the mission of each entity is well defined, obviously the entities, the companies, the private sector will immediately see what are the advantages in going to the services that these entities are providing. So it means that the funding, at least part of it, probably 1/3, whatever, okay, should come always from direct services, competitive service, okay. Another part, obviously, I completely agree, either from European, either from national funds, for the part that obviously is not sustainable in terms of economically, okay. But one way of doing this is probably, for instance, pilot lines, which is one of the topics that is always on top of the table, being implemented as close to the companies or even inside the companies as possible in order to assure that they will be used every hour or of every day. And this way, if they are giving a good service, obviously it will be the private sector to do the upgrades and assure that these things will always be upgraded. Okay, that's one easy way of doing it. United States do it quite often in a lot of laboratories. Okay, but it's when we are speaking about funds, we must also speak about efficiency. And efficiency means that it's not only changing mentality, as you have stressed, but it's also changing a lot of things. And one of the topics is for sure, at least in European level, but also in national funds, the bureaucracy. Okay, if we stop losing so much time on bureaucracy and we really start evaluating the things on the impact that they have, we will certainly have a lot of funds that will be released.
Good point. Both of you, do you want to add something on this discussion?
Yeah, just to add something regarding, again, from the point of view of a data infrastructure. From a data infrastructure, the regional funding or regional restriction doesn't make any sense. So what are we going to develop to be used just in Porto or Lisbon or Coimbra? This is data. So it's national data, should be funded by national funding. When it comes to the European level, things became a little bit more tricky because data sometimes is very relevant for the country and it can be used for political negotiation. So that aspect becomes more tricky. But that doesn't mean that the researchers should not be allowed to use other computational infrastructure to process the data if the infrastructures are not available in the country. But from the data point of view, I think now we are facing in Portugal a very difficult situation because the way the research infrastructures are being funded doesn't make any sense for data.
Can I add something on you?
Well, just stress what my colleagues just mentioned. That we need this strategy to be more fluid and to have these different components, and that these need alignment so that we all can together produce more impact. Because in fact the fragmentation leads to the misuse of resources. And I think we all are willing to do better with the scarce resources we have. I would just like to make a final point. We are talking a lot about data, and data is extremely important. But we need, and I think it is a challenge for Europe that sometimes stops investing in certain areas. We need to continue to produce data. So that kind of effort still needs to be funded.
Well, thank you very much. So we started with half an hour delay. I want to end up with half an hour delay. So I'll just make a short sum up of what we, at least my vision of some key messages that we have here. So it's clear that we need a kind of global model of this landscape, that we understand what the different organizations are, what they do and what they don't do also, because it's also very important. But we need to have this model that will allow us a clarification and somehow to clarify the segmentation of roles, meaning that is not a barrier, it's not stopping from, but it's clear that which are the main activities of each one of these infrastructures and what are the characteristics they need to have to be able to call themselves a research infrastructure or a technological infrastructure. And by doing that, identifying the collaboration needs and links between them, so that we can look to the system and understand, well, this is what we need to do, but these ones are mainly located here, but then we need to make sure that the connections work, so that we really have an ecosystem and not a group of entities working in parallel. And to allow that, and to promote and to incentivize that, we need also a coherent funding model. And what we are here today, more and more, this is a model that needs to consider the different types of investment. We talk CapEx, OpEx, projects, contracts, whatever, but also to make it, to understand the different levels of funding, so the European, the national, regional. Of course, this is not easy to do. I think the expert group was a very important step, the work and the recommendations, a very important step. And I hope, really hope, that the countries do also their homework and understand the importance, and this is a message particularly for Portugal, because allow me to do that because we are here, that they need to actively engage in these discussions and participate actively. And so by doing that, knowing when they come home, what they need to do at national and regional level for these things to happen, because otherwise their stakeholders may be left out of this transformation process. And from the European side, allow me also to say that, you know, we need to understand, if from the European side we understand and we want, and we say this needs to be involved with the member states, and this needs to be involved with countries and regions, we need complementary funding from countries or regions, they have to talk with the countries and the regions, because I've seen in the past sentences like this and decisions made at European level without any involvement from the region side. So when then it was supposed the regions to step up, no one knew about anything, they was not prepared, they didn't agree. So we really need to have a much more broad discussion and involvement of stakeholders. I know it's difficult, I know it will take time, it will not be ready at the first time, it will take time, but I think it's an effort that we all together need to do to the benefit of all of us. So again, thank you very much for this panel. I think it was a very fruitful discussion. Thank you for listening to us, and I hope we all take let's say, good ideas and especially actions to do in the future. And in the afternoon, then we will be able to go more in detail on some of these topics and come up with some, I hope, some not only problems and needs and challenges, but so with some interesting ideas and solutions on how to do it in the future. Thank you very much, and I hope that the VOSOF is going to tell us what we are going to do next.
Thank you to our panel of experts for the valuable takeaways that we will surely contribute to this afternoon's workshop. We kindly ask you to return to your seats in the front rows as we prepare to close the first half of today's event.
So I just want to say something logistical about the afternoon. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much to all of you for being here. It's quite a heavy light. Thank you so much for all of you for being here. It's been a very, very, very fantastic morning of discussion with very knowledgeable people. I think we all have learned, even if we are here for many, many years, working in these issues. So in the afternoon, as José Carlos said, we'll go into the nitty-gritty, we'll go into the details of the needs assessment of the research and the technology infrastructures. This will take place on the 3rd floor of this building, and we will indicate how to get there. But before that, you must be hungry. So there's some lunch outside, again, but outside inside a tent, quite a big tent. And I trust that will be good. So just like to invite you to have lunch, and then go in the afternoon for that meeting. But before we leave, I just like to take this opportunity, because I won't have another one, to thank everyone who collaborated with me in the organization of this. First of all, my colleagues Andrea and Vera and Marta, who were instrumental in making this happen, and that is very, very important. Without them, this would not have taken place at all. Also, the colleagues from the communication service, who are making a huge effort for communicating this effectively, and all the other people that have helped, including people at higher hierarchical levels than me, because we only do what we're allowed to do. So thank you so much, and enjoy the lunch, and I really hope to see you this afternoon.